gentlemen, Binnall of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America Audio with your host, Tim Binnall.
Hello out there, my friends. This is Tim Binnall of BinnallofAmerica.com with another edition of BOA Audio Season 4. Welcome to 2009, folks. It is going to be an amazing year, let's hope. Hope you had a very safe and joyous New Year's celebration. As you may have guessed here on the program this week, we are going to put the final nails in the coffin of 2008 as we wrap up our year in ufology with special guests Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop in the first ever true dual interview episode of BOA Audio. Interesting note that I didn't even know about till I saw Greg Bishop's post about the dual interview at UFO Mystic is that this is the first ever Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop interview. They'd never appeared on a program together before, so it's historic in a way, as we finally got the UFO Mystics together in one place for a lengthy interview. As I'm sure you discerned from the musical introduction of the program, we are going to be talking also about the Bigfoot hoax from midsummer. Even though this is a ufology year in review, we got to talk about the Bigfoot hoax. It was probably the biggest esoteric story of the year, if not number 2 behind Stephenville, but it was a massive story. And if we're going to do 2008 any justice, if we're talking about the year in review, even though we're going to be delving 90% into ufology, you got to talk about the Bigfoot hoax. Unlike Part 1, which saw us cover a myriad of stories, probably close to 10 or 13, in Part 2, the number of topics is cut down greatly to about 6 to 8. So there's a lot more in-depth discussion on some of these big stories from the latter half of 2008. Here's the lineup of what we're going to be covering here. We're going to dissect the Edgar Mitchell UFO disclosure. I put that in quotes. The Bigfoot body hoax of mid-August. Blossom Goodchild's UFO non-event from October. The election of Barack Obama and the ongoing subsequent UFO disclosure push, including the Million Facts on Washington movement. The folding of Alien Worlds magazine in December, and the dual celebrity endorsements of ufology from UK pop superstar Robbie Williams and American actor Keanu Reeves. Plus, we're going to remember Eric Beckyord and Monsignor Corrado Balducci, both of whom passed away in 2008. Closing out the discussion, we're going to talk about what esoteric genres are hot and what genres are not as 2008 comes to a close. What fields had their momentum built up, what fields stalled out. We're going to be talking about all that stuff, plus what genres may be on the rise in 2009. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop, push over that rock you're living under, because you got to find out about the UFO Mystics. I'm not going to give you the bios because I'll be here all day reading both of them. They are highly decorated esoteric researchers. You can find out more from them at nickredfern.com. That's obviously Nick Redfern's website. Greg Bishop's sites are excludedmiddle.com or radiomisterioso.com, radiomisterioso.com. Want to check that out? One of the very best podcasts on the internet for paranormal radio. I give it a 5-star recommendation and a show you definitely should be listening to alongside BOA Audio. And of course they post under the collective title UFO Mystic. You can find them at ufomystic.com, an essential daily stop for any UFO enthusiast online who wants to get quality UFO news. You get it at ufomystic.com. Check that out. So those are the websites. Check them out for more information about Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop. One other thing I want to note before we start the interview, for those folks who don't listen to the end of the program, I don't want you to be confused in January here when you don't hear any BOA audio. It's time for our annual winter hiatus. Every January we take the month off to cultivate new conversations and tape a whole new batch of BOA audio interviews. That is what's going on here after this week's episode is posted. Although I'll be honest, I'm probably going to take about 5 days to relax because I've been working non-stop for the last 6 weeks at least on BOA Audio, Binnall of America, and my outside web work. So sit back, relax, enjoy the latter half of this marathon conversation, and come on back in late January of 2009 for all new BOA Audio episodes. I'll have a little teaser at the end of the program, reveal one of the guests who will definitely be on when we come back to the internet airwaves. And of course, stay tuned to Binnall of America throughout the month of January. We've got a bunch of new columnists coming on board BOA, a new spin-off of Richard Thomas's Room 101, and I'll have a bevy of teasers for what's going to be coming down the pike on BOA Audio as 2009 unfolds. Without any further ado, let's close the book on 2008, my friends. This dual interview was recorded on December 17, 2008. Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop, the UFO Mystics, talking about the latter half of 2008 on BOA Audio, Season 4. The next story was another non-story, another UK UFO Files style story that I'm sure you guys have heard many times, but somehow once again became a national story. I don't understand this in 2008, but it happened again. That's the Edgar Mitchell UFO disclosure, in quotes, non-story. Picked up all over the place on July 24th-ish, around that time, the end of July. I remember it being a big story, but I will say, thankfully, many people in Esoterica online were hip to the game at this point and were like, wait a minute, this isn't a story. This happened already like 3 or 4 years ago. But it was frustrating, too, in a way, because it was like, Jesus, like, we get it, but the mainstream media doesn't get it, and they don't seem to understand that they reported this story probably like 3 or 4 years ago, and they're still reporting the same story like it's news again. So, I don't know, let's talk about the Edgar Mitchell UFO disclosure in quotes.
You're quite right, Tim, but I mean, for those of us within ufology, you know, the Mitchell story, it's an interesting story. There's no doubt about that, you know, of him having spoken with high-level people and, you know, the idea that UFOs as alien crafts exist and have visited us, etc. But you're right, it's not a new story. It's just, you know, it was actually presented, it surfaced on a British radio show called Kerrang! Radio. Kerrang! Is actually a rock music magazine in Britain, which started off in the 80s as like classic heavy metal based, and then through the years it went through rock, and you know, now it covers all sorts of alternative guitar based music, rock music, etc. But they have their own radio show, and I've done the show a few times with link ups from over here, and they had Mitchell on talking about, you know, his basic story of what he's been told and things he's heard, etc. And of course, you know, it became big news, although it wasn't necessarily a completely new story. But I think part of the reason is because of who was relating the story. You know, it was coming from an astronaut who set foot on the moon. So, you know, in that respect, I can fully appreciate and understand why the story surfaced and why it's attracted so much attention around the world, because, you know, the media does have short memories. Having worked on newspapers, I know that, you know, freelancers particularly come and go, and somebody may well not remember fully that something was covered 3 or 4 years ago, and it gets covered again. You know, that happens a lot within the media. But there's little really commentary you can make upon the story, because, you know, we really need the people who Mitchell spoke with to come forward and have them reveal their testimony. You know, the person behind the story, the person telling the story made the story popular because, you know, the guy has a fine reputation as an astronaut. I'd be more interested in speaking to the people who told him that they know all this is going on.
Yeah.
I think that would be the story for me.
What about you, Greg? What do you think about this, the Edgar Mitchell UFO non-disclosure, if you will?
Well, ditto everything that Nick said. I think some of those people have spoken to us, although not the same, you know, the same kind of people, but not the same people that spoke to Mitchell. And the way I look at it is, what it does is it brings up this issue. Why does somebody with as good a reputation and in such a position that Edgar Mitchell is believe that there's aliens on the planet and that we know that they're here and there's some contact with them? That's where my government doesn't know anything and doesn't want to reveal it to us falls apart. How can somebody like this say that? What does he know And what do the people know that have told him? And are they telling him the truth? And why is he so convinced of such a thing and has said it repeatedly? There's other, there's plenty of other people in the government that are not have connections that are not nearly as public as Edgar Mitchell have said the same thing. I don't have an explanation for that, and Michael Salla and everybody can laugh at me for it. But maybe it just comes down to, what you want to believe and how, what you accept into your worldview as it's told to you. And also on the other side of it, what's the motivation of the people telling Mitchell and other people like this these stories? Why are they telling them that? Who's pulling that string from wherever? Are they pulling the string because it's a true one, or because they want a public idea to get out in the public that says the government knows that there's aliens and has interaction with them? Aliens from other planets, I mean, not from other dimensions or whatever.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with that because the idea is it's extraterrestrials from another planet visiting us, and that's like the big X, the big kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back in my mind about my ideas. And so when I hear that, it both inspires me and worries me.
Well, I wanted to take another tack.
Does that make any sense?
Oh, yeah, it made sense.
Okay. When I get into these areas, sometimes I start to babble because I'm not exactly sure where my footing is anymore. I'm fine with that, but I mean, if the government was going to reveal something, I think they should have revealed something by now, unless they don't know what they're doing, don't know what they're dealing with. And according to Edgar Mitchell, some people do know what they're dealing with, and that's not disturbing. It's kind of confusing to me.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. It is strange, but I kind of see also what you mean by that. Maybe they're floating it up the flagpole, and then the question or the observation I wanted to make, and then sort of turn it over to you guys, is that just based on the way the media picked up on this story and the way we've kind of observed here that the media is changing in the last few years, and in a way to tie it on to what Nick said about the UFO flap in the UK, about how some people, they hear about other people see UFOs and then they feel it's okay to talk about UFOs. I kind of feel like maybe that's the attitude of the media right now. Not so much that there's this overarching media cover-up that people in ufology desperately want to believe in, but that it's a combination of laziness and fear of ridicule, and that they really want this story and would welcome a UFO disclosure story if they weren't the first ones to talk about it, or if they had the solid enough footing where they were, their reputations would be still intact, if you will. But it seems like the mainstream media isn't running from UFO disclosure, but they're certainly not going to run towards it. What do you think of that?
Well, I think when it comes to the media, and UFOs, you can apply their attitude to the UFO subject to a lot of subjects. I think the media latches onto things that are in the public arena or that have captured the public's imagination. Whether it's, reality TV or some pop star or whatever. You look at the magazines on the checkout counters, they're full of the same faces, Paris Hilton, Britney Spears, and nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of people who enjoy reading about all that sort of stuff. But, it's when one magazine follows a story of one celebrity, the others pick up on it and everybody's looking for the story. And I think to an extent, there's some lazy journalism, but I think also that's just the nature of the media. I think there is sometimes a tendency for people in the UFO subject to think that we're ufologists and everybody else is the human race, when in reality we're all human beings. And so the way the UFO community acts or the media acts, or, how a bunch of, university professors act or a bunch of cheerleaders act, that's just the nature of human beings. And I think we shouldn't look for any special reason why the media follows the UFO subject. They're doing it because the media is in the realm to sell newspapers, to get viewing figures up, etc., etc. And if they can do it through bringing people forward with a UFO story, but next year that drops off and astrology's a big thing, they'll do that. So.
Yeah. So you kind of got what I was saying there. We're kind of in agreement there. That it's not some overarching cover-up. It's just human nature, the way that this thing's going down. What do you think, Greg? What I said and what Nick said?
Well, yeah, I would agree with everything you said. It's faddish, and if something's okay to talk about, somebody has to take the lead with that, be it one news organization or a newspaper or a TV show or whatever. I mean, if a story breaks and it seems to have legs and there's fairly respectable people behind it, yeah, they'll follow it up. And of course, I think that, in isolated cases, there have been cover-ups on certain things, not, maybe some to do with UFO stories, but probably mostly to do with, government screw-ups or illegal things or malfeasance or whatever. I mean, I think those can masquerade as a UFO cover-up, especially if the UFO cover-up has to do with some sort of military project. But in general, if there's like Nick said, if one person or group takes the news organization takes the lead, the others will follow, and that's there hasn't been any UFO story ever, I think, that becomes the touchstone of yes, they're here and it's okay to believe about it. But as the years go on, I think people get a little bit less cynical and maybe a little bit more interested, and that includes the people doing the news reporting who are human too.
Yeah, absolutely. I know this is the Year in Ufology 2008 Year in Ufology Year in Review, but we're going to touch on a couple of crypto type stories because one was a massive story, and the following one was a passing of someone who was dabbled in a lot of different realms and mainly cryptozoology. But we'll talk about Mr. Beck Jordan in a moment after we get to the Bigfoot body bonanza, my favorite story of 2008. The absolute high comedy, farcical nature of this thing was amazing. I couldn't believe how big it got. I know I was out in L.A. at the time and visiting Greg and visiting my family out in San Diego, and I was like, this is unbelievable. And I still have screen captures from CNN.com where the front page story was Bigfoot press conference. And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever live to see the day. I never thought I would even though it turned out to be a horrific nightmare of a story, it was quite compelling to be watching it unfold. You've been intimately involved in the cryptozoology world, Nick. So I guess, what are your thoughts, first and foremost, on the whole story and how it happened and how it unfolded this past summer?
Well, first and foremost, I would agree with exactly what you said, Tim, about, would you ever see anything like this again? And I think, regardless of what people's personal thoughts are in the aftermath of it, there's absolutely no doubt that it was, like this huge unfolding soap opera / saga that, it was, were you there when the Bigfoot body story began? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, were you there when Kennedy was shot? It was a piece of, like it or not, it was a piece of 40 in history, and it always will be. Now, 40 in history doesn't always have to be good, but there's absolutely no doubt that it was a major significant part of the cryptozoological world in 2008, but not for good reasons. But it did take upon, legendary status, and there's absolutely no doubt that for a while there were certain players in the subject who were thinking, wow, maybe this time someone has got a body. I kind of liken it a little bit to the whole thing that kicked off in the 90s in England when Ray Santilli unleashed the alien autopsy film. Very similar scenario. Here's the proof, it's going to be unleashed. Media all turns up. There's a big press conference. The story breaks. At work the next day, everybody's like, wow, did you see the TV yesterday? Or have you read the newspapers about this body, etc.? And the thing with the alien autopsy film is that took longer to unravel, whereas the Bigfoot story unraveled very quickly.
Yeah.
Now, my thoughts as far as what was going on at the time, I think most people in the UFO field, despite what the media, there's a lot of media hype saying, oh, these cryptozoologists and monster hunters just fell for it, and now look at them. That is exactly what happened. Most researchers, and certainly pretty much everybody I knew, was very, very cautious and just took very much a wait-and-see, patient, quiet approach and just waited day by day to see what happens. But the media didn't want that. They wanted, the poor old cryptozoologists once again have been proven to be just eccentrics and, myth chasers. That actually wasn't the roots of what was going on. In the wake of it, I think I would have to say it's a big tragedy for several reasons. I think people who believe they've genuinely seen Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or any sort of weird creature will be, and they don't have proof, or maybe they've got a blurry photograph, will be extremely cautious about coming forward and going on a mainstream news show and having the journalist who's interviewing them say, or the TV anchor interviewing them and say, oh, well, why should we believe you when that whole story of last year, which was going to trumpeted as the biggest thing ever, that collapsed, so why should we believe you? I think that will go through a lot of witnesses' minds. I think there's also the fact that will relate or translate to the crypto community as well. Whenever someone's got a new book out on Bigfoot, inevitably the Bigfoot hoax story is going to surface and is going to be used as a way of demolishing any reality and credibility that the subject has. Now, it doesn't mean it will diminish the credibility or the respectability, but it can be used quite easily to do so if they choose to go down that path. And I think that's the biggest problem with hoaxes, is that they inevitably, and if it's a big hoax and a successful one and that gets so much attention, it has a knock-on effect on what is hopefully, the genuine aspects of the subject.
All right, what did you think, Greg? I know you and I were right on the ground during the Bigfoot body bonanza, so what were your thoughts on it?
You know what, I just thought it was, really funny. I really enjoyed watching it. I was exceedingly cynical about it to begin with that little smidgen of hope that you have,
Yeah, I'll say, too, that to sort of jump on what you just said there at the end, there was, I'll be honest, and as cynical as I am, there was a moment there during that week before the press conference and before I really kind of knew who the players were, but as it was really sort of heating up, that I know that there was a lot of stuff going on at the time, and, I was kind of thinking to myself, maybe this could be it, but of course...
everybody thought about that for a second or two.
Yeah. So, it was exciting in that way, and like I said, to see it received such prominent coverage, and it did have relatively positive coverage till it became quickly apparent that it was a hoax. And, I'll have to send you guys or post on the year in review page those screen captures of the scene. And these weren't, Bigfoot hoax headlines. These were Bigfoot body found or something, and it was like, in a way, it was like living in an alternative universe or getting to see what it would actually be like for a brief moment if one of these stories really did break and become solved. So that was exciting to be able to watch it just for that brief moment until the House of Cards fell apart.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that big of a problem until I started thinking about what Nick said, is that the people will be much more reluctant, at least for a while, to come forward with any kind of sighting of a cryptoid for a while, and that's not good. That diminishes the access we have to studying whatever it is may be there, and just as you talked about how what a big fiasco it was. If you had a real conspiratorial bent of mind, you'd think that these guys were hired by somebody like Psychop or something to just heap ridicule upon the cryptozoological community just by their actions. Because, when you look at it, you think, what did they think they were going to get away with?
Yeah, exactly.
They think they were going to get some money before somebody was able to examine, a gorilla suit or whatever it was, a monkey suit with a bunch of possum guts in it or whatever it was. I don't know what they thought they were trying to get away with, and I'm sure they were playing it for money, but who's going to give them money before they have the whatever the word is in Latin, before they had the body? Maybe they thought people were stupid enough to do that. I don't know. But, I think it was basically played for the money angle, and they just timed it wrong, and they didn't count on people being as inquisitive and sharp as they were before any actual money was handed over.
Yeah, and my impression, too, was that they were playing it for the money, and then they got mixed up with Biscardi, who's a natural promoter, and then it got way out of their hands. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how much. There's an ongoing debate, I guess, from what I understand, about how much he knew beforehand, before the big press conference and all that. But I think they, hoaxers and hoaxers, collided in a way, and it turned into a bigger clusterfuck than could have possibly even imagined, probably on anyone's part.
Yeah, you know what? If something real, quote-unquote real, happens, I think it's going to be with a lot less fanfare, and people are going to find out about it after the fact, whether it be UFOs or Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or whatever. I mean, the kind of person who would be honest about that kind of discovery does not strike me as the kind of person that's going to make a circus out of it. I could be wrong. I hope I'm not. But I mean, a whimper rather than a bang. These things will be revealed.
I'll keep that in mind. The next thing is the other half of the crypto duo of the summer of 2008, and I guess I'll turn this one over to Nick, because he's a little more focused also in the crypto realm. Greg will have something to say, too, about this passing. Yes, Eric Beckyord, who passed away, kind of a mysterious death from what I understand, not in the way he died, but just in the timeline of his death. I think people heard about it at the end of August, but then it turned out he had died like 2 months earlier and no one knew, or something strange like that. But I've only been in this field for about 4 years, and I know Eric Beckyord was in the field for quite a long time before I came along, so he was a little before my time as well. And I know you guys probably have had, if not some interaction with him, definitely knowledge of his work and some stories from Eric Beckyord's days in esoterica. So we'll start with Nick here on Eric Beckyord, passed away here in 2008. Let's remember him a little bit.
Yeah, I met Eric for the first time, actually. I can remember exactly when it was and where it was. It was in a pub in Wiltshire, England, called The Barge, which is one of the main hangouts in the whole crop circle season. And Eric would sometimes go over to Britain in the summer and check out the crop circles like everybody else was. And I can remember him walking around kind of mysteriously with this huge big leather, kind of like a briefcase, but kind of bigger, just bulging with papers and things. And just, you could tell, begging everybody to ask what he got in there. He was kind of acting mysterious and a little bit aloof. And that was sort of my first exposure to Eric. And I can remember that first year, just, seems to be everywhere you go, Eric was there kind of lurking in the shadows, and he'd be, "Hi, how's it going?" like that. And then I didn't hear from him for years. And actually last year, and even earlier this year, towards the very start of this year, January, February, he phoned me quite often just to chat about cryptozoology. Now, a lot of people had quite controversial run-ins with Eric, where the conversation would get really heated and loud. I never actually experienced that. He just used to phone me up and say, "Hey, what's going on?" And always used to have strange suggestions. You need to apply to go on this particular TV show. I think you'll be good on this one, and things like that. And I think one of the reasons why he used to phone me was because he had a deep interest in the whole issue of Bigfoot as it relates to some of the more stranger paranormal aspects of the subject, which is one that, for a lot of cryptozoologists, it's like, oh, no, we don't go down that path. It's all flesh and blood. Now, for me, there's no doubt in my mind that there's a considerable body of evidence to suggest that Bigfoot kind of goes in hand with weird shit, to put it bluntly. There's more going on than just some sort of lumbering ape wandering around the woods and conveniently never getting caught. And Eric seemed to go to more extreme lengths with that sort of theory than I did. And, I kind of never got the brunt of the other side of Eric because, we're quite agreeable on things. But I do know and maybe Greg has had some experience, I don't know, or has some anecdotes, that some people who had a differing of opinion to Eric, they had far more amusing and memorable stories than mine, which are unfortunately a little bit boring and just, sort of genial conversations. But, I mean, there are some people I know who could tell stories all night, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I remember reading in the Excluded Middle Anthology, I think it was an interview with Jim Moseley, but I'm not positive. Greg would remember, I'm sure, where he recounts his meeting with Eric Beckyord, where Eric got into an argument with him about what time they were going to meet or something like that. Do you recall what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I forgot that was an Excluded Middle. I can't remember why I asked about Beckyord, but he said he went to the Queen Mary in Los Angeles and Long Beach to meet with Beckyord, and Moseley got there at the time that Beckyord said he was going to meet, and Beckyord showed up like half an hour later or something when he was just about to leave. And Moseley said, "Well, where the fuck were you?" And Beckyord said, "I said, 6:30. Where the fuck were you? Why were you here?" And he said Beckyord just got mad and stormed out.
Yeah.
Over that one thing. He said they were going to meet and talk about stuff about UFOs and Bigfoot or something like that, or I don't know what it was. But, just because somebody was there, not at the right time or got the times wrong, that was a point of contention, and Beckyord stormed out. So you'd figure he's just like, where the hell were you? I was here half an hour ago. Oh, I thought you meant so-and-so. Oh, well, whatever. I'm sorry about that. Let me buy you a drink and make it up to you. No, he had to get mad and storm out.
Was that just...
Beckyord actually lived in Los Angeles near me, about 5 miles from me, for many years in the early 1990s. There used to be meetings at a house in Santa Monica with this guy, Gary Schultz, who was early Area 51 New World Order type person. He used to do a lot of stuff with Norio Hayakawa, actually. Anyway, Gary had these meetings at his house, and, they'd be like 6 or 8 people there, and Beckyord showed up at a few of them, because he lived in Malibu. I don't know where his money came from or where he got the money to live in this house up in the hills in Malibu, but he did. He came to that meeting. I remember he told Gary Schultz that he had some incredible films of UFOs and videos, and I thought, geez, I want to stay for this. And he was going to show them after the meeting, after everybody left. And since Gary trusted me, he said, yeah, stay and we'll all watch them. And there was a lot of crap in there, and there was a couple of fairly impressive ones that I still remember. But the upshot of the story was I got up to, Beckyord left, and then I got up to leave after talking with Schultz for a while. I couldn't find my car keys. I'm looking all over the place. I can't find the car keys. And finally I thought maybe Eric picked them up by accident for some reason. So we called his house, and he took my car keys with him. And I couldn't get, and he goes, oh, well, you'll have to come up and get them. I was like, well, I can't get anywhere. I don't have my car. Sorry, you're just going to have to come up and get them. I can't leave. So I went and met a friend of mine at a bar because I knew he drank there, and he was drunk out of his mind.
This is Beckyord or your friend?
This other friend of mine I used to work with.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I knew he was at this bar all the time, and I got there, and the guy is like practically falling down drunk, and I said, can I use your car? He goes, sure, but I got to come with you. So, I had this raving drunk guy, babbling at me all the way up to Malibu. We go up to Eric Beckyord's house, and he left the keys in his mailbox for me to pick up. He wouldn't even come and let me come to the house and get them.
Wow.
That was a very, I wasn't really mad at him. I was just kind of mystified at his weird behavior.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of say. Sounds like he was one of Esoterica's great eccentrics amongst the many eccentrics in Esoterica.
Yeah, he was very eccentric. I don't take offense very easily, so I just thought it was just weird. Another time I was standing in a supermarket on Sunset Boulevard where it ends at the beach. I was just standing in line getting something, and Eric walked up behind me. He said, hey, Greg. Hey, Eric, how's it going? And this was after the key thing. He goes, I got some pictures of aliens. I said, yeah, what? So he opened up that big satchel that Nick was talking about, and he pulled out these pictures, and they were pictures of, like, some bushes. There's an alien looking out of the bush, and I was like, where, Eric? And he kind of, like, outlined it for me. It's like, I said, Eric, don't you think maybe that's just a shape there in the woods? Oh, no, the guy that took the picture saw them running away. And I was thinking, why didn't he get pictures of that?
Do you think he was just like an eccentric ultra believer, or someone who was, having a good laugh at the expense of everybody, kind of, or was in on the joke, if you will, or what do you think his take on all this was?
Oh no, I think he was totally serious. I mean, I think he completely believed in what he was doing. He had a Bigfoot and UFO museum in Venice in his house. Basically, it was a bunch of folders on the floor in various rooms of the house. He had to go and pick up the folders and look in them. So, but and then he did the same thing. I think he had another museum up in San Francisco, and he moved up there a few years later, which is where he ended up dying of cancer. But no, I think he was totally serious about it, and I did not know that he had that that paranormal Bigfoot thing, and I kind of respect him a little bit more for that. He did have a book he was going to write, he said, called Sex and the Single Sasquatch, I think was the name of it, but he never wrote it.
Oh, man.
I liked him. I had nothing against him. I just thought he was kind of a hot-button guy and basically a very advanced dilettante.
There you go. Yeah, well, I think that's probably why you and me and Nick and even Paul are kind of all friends, because, we try not to take this thing too seriously. You can't get too upset at people just because they don't agree with you or because you think their views are far out,
Yeah, well, I think, for me, I think I'm all kind of in the same boat. In a lot of aspects, I'm a very advanced dilettante, which is what basically ufology is, until you get into areas where people actually go out, talk to people, look at things, research things. So, on Project Beta, I guess I wasn't, but the rest of the time, I'm just doing the kind of thing that Eric Beckjord did. It's just that I'm not as insane, I guess.
There you go. All right, and now, not coincidentally, I guess, the next one is also another passing, and I'm not sure how much you guys know about this guy, but I did know of him fairly well. I had an interesting experience with him, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's Monsignor Corrado Balducci, a very high-ranking Vatican. I don't know if he was exactly high-ranking within the Vatican, but he was affiliated with them pretty closely, and spoke out positively about UFOs for many years. He passed away in late September this past year. Now, do you guys, either of you, know much about the Monsignor, or am I the only one who really had an experience with him?
No, I've never really dug into all that sort of stuff, really.
What about you?
Me either. I totally agree with Nick.
Well, I will just say, I guess I did. I recounted this story on Karen Dolan's show, but I'll do it here too for the year in review. Is just that it's strange, and I had said we had Stan on last week, and he was the first interview that I ever did, like one-on-one. I just plucked up the cards and sat down next to Stan at the X Conference 2005. But that same year, Monsignor Balducci was the keynote speaker, and they brought him in from Italy, and this real wild cat of a character that I met at the X Conference named Frank Knees. I'm sure he's out there somewhere. Hopefully he's listening. Back when I was just a nobody loser, which is, now I'm just a loser. I'm not a nobody, I hope. But back when I had never done an interview before or even knew, anybody or anything, I had just bought the same digital recorder I'm using to tape this interview and was going to start up my own audio show. And Frank, I told Frank this, and Frank said, he was a wildcat. I just can't emphasize that enough. Just all over the place, kind of like Eric Beckjord-esque. But he somehow at some point in the weekend he runs up to me and says, "We're interviewing Monsignor Balducci later on this afternoon." And this is a high-ranking Catholic guy, very esteemed keynote speaker of the conference. I've never done an interview before. I was just about ready to shit my pants. And the same style of Binnall of America questions. I remember I said something like, well, I'll just ask him, dude, have you ever really felt like, and Frank was saying, you can't, this guy's 75 years old, he's from the Vatican, you can't address him as dude. And that was my baptism of fire to interviewing. And really all I did was ask one question because we only got about 15 minutes, and it was a very intimidating experience because he was had a real air of sort of power to him, I guess, and he was a demonologist really more than a ufologist. It was just a really great experience for me, and I remember he remarked to me in broken English, because he really only spoke very little English, but he said, "Oh, you're so young." And at that point, I was pretty young, and that was about 4 years ago now, so I'm nearly 30, so that's scary enough. But that was pretty cool for me, and And one of the other things that he said to me that I always remember, because this was like a serious demonologist. This wasn't like, a couple of kids, in suburban Massachusetts with a ghost group. I mean, this guy was serious demonologist working with the Vatican. He knew the guy who ended up becoming the present Pope. I don't know if it was off the record, but he's passed away now, and it's not like it was a secretive answer, so I'm going to just share it now, and I'm going to try and get a hold of some of the people that were in the interview with me to make sure it's okay to use. But somebody asked him about evil and demons and stuff like that, and if they should be worried about them. And he said that the demons and evil and Satan don't care at all about normal people. They're only interested in people with power, like presidents and world leaders and people with serious influence, and that normal people shouldn't be worried about evil or the devil or demons like coming after them. I don't know, that answer always kind of stuck with me, because here's this expert on demons and in a serious way with the Catholic Church, and I'm sure he was a part of many exorcisms and stuff like that. And to hear that kind of answer kind of blew my mind at the time, because it sort of made me not so worried about that sort of thing, because it was like, shit, I'm not the president. I don't need to worry about demons. I don't know. That's my story about Monsignor Balducci, and it was great to meet him, and it's a sad passing, of course, that we lost him here this year. And he was very influential in having UFOs accepted by the Catholic Church, like we talked about earlier, and I'm sure that he pulled a lot of the strings behind the scenes to make that sort of open dialogue possible. So, and I'll recommend folks check out the interview that we had with Monsignor Balducci nearly 4 years ago now. So
I'll check it out.
Yeah, that's all. That's the longest I'll talk, I think, tonight. But that's my story, and yeah, so it was pretty cool, and I was pretty sad to hear that he passed away. So, and then the next event, of course, since we've broken the language barrier, I'm going to unsanitize my question here for the next key point here in 2008, and it's mid-October. It is the Blossom Goodchild UFO non-event. She, at some point in the summer, she predicted a UFO sighting, a mass UFO sighting in Alabama, of all places. For some reason, and this is where I'm going to unsanitize it, for some reason, people actually believed this. And the question I have is, what the fuck is wrong with people? Why are people believing this? This is insane. And I don't understand why an Australian channeler, like, just because she said it, all of a sudden everybody jumped on it. And when I was on the Karen Dolan show, because it was all around the same time of year, she asked me what I thought of the Blossom Goodchild UFO prediction, and it was like, the short answer is I don't think about it. It's crazy talk to even, give this sort of thing the time of day. And of course, as we know, the UFO never showed up. But it was just another weird event, and it got big coverage. I mean, this wasn't just some little minor story. A lot of people were talking about Blossom Goodchild and her Alabama UFOs. So I'm sure you guys heard about this, so I guess let's talk a little bit about this. It's yet another incident in 2008 and throughout the history of esoterica where big predictions and big things, and then they never end up delivering. But I guess let's phrase the question and the discussion on Blossom around, I feel like I'm talking about that old NBC show, but let's frame the question around, why does anyone still believe in this junk? And I guess before I even turn it over to you guys, I want to reemphasize a point that I made to Nick when he was out here visiting me in October around the same time, that a lot of people want to say, we got to clean up ufology, and I'll extend that to all of esoterica, and we want to clean it up. But the hoaxers are half the problem. The other half of the problem is the people that believe in this crap, and you can't force them out. You can't freeze them out. You can't blackball those people, because that's the audience. That's the consumer base of the esoteric field, a good part of it. So to all the people that want to clean up ufology, we're going to have to get rid of a lot of people that are following ufology that aren't personalities or anything, that'll just jump on this and believe it. So I guess we'll just dive in first with, why did this story actually get any, support from anyone? Because it doesn't seem like it's a complete non-story. It should never have even gotten past her YouTube page.
Well, I mean, I would say, I think you have to look at it really as just the latest in a long line of prophecies. Now, not just with respect to UFOs, but with respect to forecasting any sort of future event, whether it's like a cataclysm of the earth, Jesus returning, Bigfoot's going to, appear on the White House lawn or whatever. The fact is that, prophecies for some reason, whether it's something sort of inbuilt in our psyche or our unconscious, fascinate people. It's like when 1999 came around, everybody's like, oh my God, Nostradamus and the world's going to end, there's going to be a nuclear attack.
Yeah.
And it did capture people's imagination.
In 2012.
That's what happened. Sorry?
And just like 2012.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's going to be people who are going to be hyperventilating throughout the entire year of 2012 until, the year ends, and that's when it's all supposed to kick off. I'm not saying that it's not possible that one day someone could prophesy something that actually turns out to be 100% accurate. The problem is, if you look back now retrospectively at pretty much everything that's been said in the 14 world from a prophecy perspective, it's either been wrong or they failed to prophesize the really significant things like 9/11.
Yeah.
So that's the problem I have with prophecies. And, if somebody says to me they channeled Space Commander Zax from Starbelt 46 or whatever, and who's told them that, he's going to land next week and cure cancer and save the rainforests, I'm not going to waste any time digging into the story. What I actually would dig into, and I think this is more interesting, I think this is an area that Greg as well would agree is worth looking at, is not so much the messenger, but who is there actually some sort of entity, like the cosmic trickster that's playing with us, that is actually projecting a message to some of these people who earnestly believe what they're saying. It's not just conjured up in their mind. There are a lot of stories about people who believe they're in touch with higher entities, not just in ufology, but, if you look back at the contactee years and, way before that, you could even argue about religious texts. The idea that there are higher powers, higher entities that interact with us, and they tell us things, but then those things turn out not to be true, like the trickster element that a lot of researchers of some of the more left field aspects of the subject talk about. I think for me, that's more intriguing, rather than dismissing a lot of these people as simply cranks or liars. Are they being deceived by something that's masquerading, as alien today and as goblins and fairies 500 years ago and as gods 2,000 years ago for some reason we don't understand? For me, that's the more interesting angle of people prophesizing things and being told things about the future by higher beings or whatever.
Yeah. What about you, Greg? What's your take on old Blossom Goodchild?
Well, I think that while Nick is saying this, I wouldn't even have thought of that, the trickster element, and because I do think some people do have some kind of connection to something that's not time and space and whatever based, but that the human mind can hook into. I think that's been proven many times. The problem is that whatever that is that we hook into is either one knows what it's doing and is playing with us, or two, whatever that message is has to come through your own personality, your belief system, your hopes or fears for the future, all that. And if it's, if you say something is coming from a god or a spirit or a guide or whatever, all of a sudden it's like mentioning the Bible or God on TV. People are saying, oh, this is important. Whether it is or not, suddenly there's this, reaction in a lot of people's minds, especially believers. Oh, we're going to have to listen to this.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that a lot of people believe it is because, and I see this at conspiracy conventions and everything, people are addicted to that thrill ride. It's like going to the amusement park every few weeks or whatever, if you're addicted to that, or, flying like me. I like to go paragliding, not because it scares me, because it exhilarates me. And I think that there's a certain segment of the population that are exhilarated by the fact that people will predict something and that they might have known something before everybody else does. And, so what if it didn't work out this time? Maybe it'll work out next time. They don't care that it didn't work out really. They're just addicted to the feeling of that rush of fear or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's not just UFO people. That's a lot of different people. It's a large segment of society. And what you mentioned about cleaning up ufology, I hesitate to say that there should be a cleanup of ufology. Who decides who's going to be cleaned out? Who decides what's right? Is there going to be a article of confederation saying what people can and can't say, or can and can't believe, or can and can't bring to the table? I think the way that the study of anomalies is now, it's putting a bunch of rules in place. I think it's ridiculous. It's like trying to grab a handful of water. I mean, it's not. There's so many different personalities and so many aspects to this that making a rule just creates a wall where there's one side that says they're right and another side that's not right, and the side that's apparently not right revolts and has their own thing. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't believe it does affect my credibility at all, because this is Bigfoot.
Whitten and Dyer say Bigfoot was a Sasquatch costume they bought off the web and filled with possum roadkill and slaughterhouse leftovers.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
I'm interested to get his take, because frankly, I'm creeped out by what's in that freezer.
He could either be excited, or he could feel like the meaning of his life is over if Sasquatch is actually found.
I hope that's not it.
That wasn't. I'm sure you understood what I was saying. I'm not in favor of cleaning up anything. So.
No, I know that. I'm just saying that some people are, and they, why? That the same reason somebody has wants to create a law or wants to push their religion on somebody or whatever. I'm right and you're not. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy people that believe crazy stuff in the UFO world. But if you look closely enough, there's a lot of people that are very circumspect about it, extremely intelligent, and not necessarily waving a banner around, but doing good work. And I prefer it that way. I don't want them, somebody who's extremely smart that a group of people think is not worth their time, saying you're out of our club and nobody should listen to you.
Exactly. And like the point I made to Nick and I said earlier here is that, you may be able to get out the pushers of the crazy theories and stuff, but you're never going to be able to get out the acceptors of the crazy theories, the believers. They're the audience. That they go hand in hand, and no matter how hard you try to get rid of one end of it, the other end is a self-sustaining cycle in a way. So it's like they can't really. I don't think the people who want to clean up the esoteric understand that or want to accept that, or they think that those people will go away when really the hoaxers and the true believers will just run off together in merriment.
Yeah, well, it's the same reason I'm really a big supporter of intellectual and basically freedom of thought. And the minute you demonize something, it takes on its own notoriousness and attracts an even worse element.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know how that would apply to the UFO thing, but just making something beyond the pale automatically gives it a certain sense of danger or legitimacy, or as soon as I see something that's banned, I want to know why.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there something here that somebody who doesn't want us to think a certain way is scared of? Maybe 80-90% of the time, yeah, it's crap. But a lot of times things are suppressed because somebody wants to keep something the way it is and not let it evolve.
Absolutely. All right, we only got 2 points left here for big events of 2008, and then we'll close the book on 08 for the most part. And that is, of course, the biggest news in America over the last year, the election of Barack Obama, thank God, as our new president. And then, in turn, tying that in with the UFO world, it seems like the minute the election results were in, everybody in the exopolitics movement was ready to start faxing away at Barack Obama, and they were sure this one is going to be the difference, my friends. So Obama's going to be the one. He promised change, and now we're going to get UFO disclosure. I guess the question really here is just, what do you think? Because it's kind of an ongoing story still about the Obama disclosure push. And now I'm at a loss for the guy's name there. Oh, Podesta, who's, kind of has a foot in both camps, has a foot in the Obama camp and the UFO camp in a weird way. So there is a little bit of smoke here, but at the same time, I feel like it's more of ufology grasping at straws at a possibility that probably won't happen, but at the same time, hyping the shit out of it. That's kind of my overall opinion of this. So, Nick, what do you think first about the Obama election, and then in turn, ufology's adopting of Obama as their savior?
Well, I mean, I think the best thing that could have happened, as a permanent resident rather than a U.S. citizen, I'm not allowed to vote. So, I was kind of an outsider looking in. But, I cannot think of anything worse than had the Republicans got elected and John McCain died.
Yeah.
That woman whose name I refuse to speak, if she became president, it would have been, I don't know what it would have been. So, I think America was looking for a change and did the right thing. I think that out of the two options, the right path was taken. Now, as far as the UFO subject is concerned, I personally think that, I'm certainly not by any means, a champion of the Republicans at all. I will stress that. But I think there's been a simplistic approach upon certain people in the UFO field that the Republicans are the bad guys hiding the truth, and the Democrats are the ones who, if anyone, would want to release it. I think that's a simplistic approach, because I think if anyone is actually sitting upon the truth about the UFOs, for the most part, they're going to be outside of the normal constraints of what we call government. Now, yes, you could argue that people like George Bush Sr., who've sort of straddled both worlds, the political world and the intelligence world, might know, or could very well know more. But your average president or prime minister in England or France or whatever doesn't necessarily have exposure to that world other than what they're told by their advisors. Now, my view would be, because people feel, and quite justifiably, I would hope, that Barack Obama will, try and rectify a lot of the things that people see as problems in America, they also see it as he'd be the guy for disclosure. But, I mean, my argument would be, if there's a real secret being hidden by a small cabal of people or whatever, what would prompt them, the only thing that would prompt them to reveal the truth to him and then have him reveal the truth to the world would be if it was a benefit to the group that's sitting on the information.
Yeah.
And people can say I'm being naive, but I cannot truthfully see any reason why, after hiding something for 60 years, somebody who's sitting on this data would say, oh, well, Barack Obama's been elected, let's put it all out for people to see. I don't get the logic behind that. And I certainly don't get the logic behind petitioning a politician to say, here's 1 million votes, here's 10 million votes, release the files. The people who are in the position of hiding the data, if data is being hidden, they're not going to be swayed by 10 million people or 50 million people. The only thing that will sway them is something that benefits them to make the decision to change the approach and policy that they followed the last 60 years. So I don't feel personally that whoever's in power it's going to make much difference. It's only going to make a difference from the people who are sitting on the information.
All right. What do you think, Greg? I'm sure you've seen this sort of thing unfold in the last couple months. So what are your thoughts on the Obama as UFO disclosure idea that's become a meme, I guess, in some circles of ufology?
Well, as we've seen in the last couple of minutes, why Nick is on more shows than I am, because something very eloquently that I pretty much agree with. And we kind of have the same take on, too bad we can't be fighting with each other like a good talk show should, right? Have virtual chairs to bash each other over the head. But, it's as far as him being elected in the first place, that was the first part of the original question. It was the second time in my life I voted out of fear. It's actually the third. For the exact reason Nick said. I wasn't a huge fan of Obama. I'm even less of a fan of the Republicans, who have basically, this administration in 8 years has basically squandered all the gains that the Republicans have made since Reagan was in office. We finally come to the end of that, that cycle in our government, and particularly in the last 8 years, I say good riddance. Now, for the idea that Obama's going to be the person that discloses everything, exactly what Nick said. I mean, that is not something that the president has purview over, or I think other presidents such as Carter and Clinton, who I think made a vague effort to try and get at some information. Whoever controls that information is either doesn't have to get permission from the executive branch to do anything with it or reveal it, or two, they are able to convince the executive branch and other people that the information, the way they present it to them, is so important that it's and so valuable politically and strategically that it's not really in their interest to say anything about it, and basically keep people in the dark. And as Nick said, it doesn't matter how many people fax a million faxes to Washington or whatever. If there's not a compelling reason, and he said that's good for them, and I would say actually scares them into revealing that information, I don't think it's going to be revealed. And I would say more power to the ex-politics people, but I think for the most part, personally, I think they're grasping at straws for the reasons that Nick and I said. That it's not something that you can petition the government for. That's a grievance that we cannot petition for a redress of.
All right, sounds good. We got the last point here, the last major event of 2008. And it wasn't really major on a world stage or a mainstream media stage, but it was a fairly big event for folks like you and me and Nick, who do writing for the paranormal world and who sort of follow the paranormal media. And that was the Folding of Alien Worlds, a very promising magazine that started up in January or so, and put out 4 issues. Stuart Miller did a great job with it. I was very excited about it, and folded this past early December or so. And I don't want to get into the alarmist nature that Nick warned me about earlier in the night when we talked about the UK UFO group. So I guess I'll just sort of ask if this might be an example of the esoteric feeling the pinch that everybody else is feeling with this economic crisis right now, and considering that the esoteric economy is pretty lousy in and of itself. No one really makes any money off of this, and when no one has any money, we're all going to make even less money, I'm afraid. Is this an example, you think, maybe of what might be going on here with the Folding of Alien Worlds, at least one factor in it? And what are your thoughts on Alien Worlds? Because I know that you guys promoted it pretty good at UFO Mystics and stuff.
Well, I mean, my opinion, it's always unfortunate when you have a good magazine that isn't kind of trying to ram one particular theory down somebody's throat. Stuart, to his credit, allowed a lot of writers to write for the magazine who had, completely differing views, some very alternative views on various cases and theories on the subject in general. And it was an alternative approach to the UFO subject, but done in a professional, glossy, colour, well-presented magazine. And it is a real shame that it closed down. But, growing up in Britain, I can tell you countless UFO magazines surfaced and folded. At the height of the X-Files wave in the 90s, in Britain, you had Alien Encounters, Sightings, UFO Reality, Uri Geller's Encounters, Enigma, X Factor, and several others I've forgotten. Every single one of them didn't last. They all closed down. The only one that's lasted in Britain is 14 Times. Now, my personal view is that there have been times in Britain, particularly 96, 97, 98, when a lot of people bought UFO magazines, and they were sustainable for a while on the newsstands. The problem is that when that huge interest goes away and everybody goes on to other things like computer games or whatever, the hardcore community in Britain at least, isn't enough to sustain a national newsstand magazine. There just aren't enough people. I don't think it's anything to do with the economy as such. I think it's just that there aren't enough people who go out and buy UFO magazines when the average member of the public who has an interest occasionally picks them up. When those people go away and it's just the hardcore couple of thousand people, that's just not enough to keep the magazine going and to pay for the printing costs, etc., etc. And I don't know if that's what happened with Stuart, but I do know that's what happened with other magazines. There is this, it's like with books. There's a tendency to think if you write a UFO book, people think my books sell like, 250,000 copies, which is absurd. I don't sell anywhere near 250,000 copies, more like, not 250,000, more like 250 in some cases, literally. I'm not joking. And so there is this tendency to think that the UFO community is a huge community. It's actually not that big as far as the book buying and magazine buying world's concerned. So that would be my opinion. You don't get the sales, then unfortunately you go under. It's that simple.
Okay, what about you, Greg? You got anything to say about that?
Well, I think it partially has to do with the economy, and one other thing about Obama, I think the last thing that on his agenda with the way the economy is whether we're going to hear about UFOs.
Thank you. Yes, I meant to make that point, that in my opinion, I would be much happier if he just fixed the economy. I could care less about UFO disclosure at this point.
I couldn't either. But with regard to Stewart's magazine, best thing in UFO magazines in years. Just if not for the fact that he's giving people with disparate opinions a place to present them and get people interested in different aspects of the UFO culture that didn't necessarily have to do with aliens coming from another planet. I mean, personally, he gave me, I think, 7 or 8 pages of interview in there, which is like more than I've ever gotten anywhere, which was, I was flabbergasted. He didn't edit anything out, and he was real nice about it. Like, I just said something I don't think I should have said. Okay, I'll take it out. And, I'm really sorry to see it go. But the thing is, I saw the first couple issues, and I thought, where's the advertising? And then I'd see the next issue. I go, Stuart, there's still no advertising. Either he's got very deep pockets or he's not going to be able to sustain this. And I didn't talk to him personally, about running the magazine, but from running UFO, what am I saying? Not UFO Mystic. From running Excluded Middle, I know that if I was anything like Stuart, I couldn't stand that part of it, going out and getting the advertising and all that to sustain the magazine, because the sales would not sustain it. It's the advertising that just sustains your magazine. And if you look at 40 and Times, they're chock full of advertising. Not so much that it's annoying, but they've got enough that that they're self-perpetuating and will keep going. And I think they've got a lot of that advertising for, at least in Britain, for the esoteric locked up. Yeah. And I didn't see that Stuart had a lot of a chance with that. So I was just kind of thinking that Alien Worlds was living on borrowed time until, either Stuart ran out of money or he went out and got some advertising. And I may be misspeaking here with whatever was going on with Stuart, but
no, I think you might be on the right track, because I remember his recent post about how they were folding the magazine, that there was a problem with trying to find advertisers. So
yeah, but maybe he did go out and try and find them, and just couldn't get anybody to put a decent-sized ad in there. John Shirley once bought the back cover from me for Excluded Middle, and that floated the magazine for another, so I could get the next issue out, so I could get some more, issues. And Disinformation once bought an entire back cover, and those are the kind of things that saved me and kept me from having to go into my money like I and my partners did in the first 3 or 4 issues.
Yeah.
So, I'm really sorry to see it go, and I wish he'd keep it going online. I think he stopped his news service.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Do either of you know if he's doing anything online at all?
Well, I know this. I don't think he's updated his Alien World site at all. for a few
Oh,
weeks
that's
now.
too bad. I think I think he'll probably, let his brain and his wallet and all that rest for a while, and then come around back to it and just do it online like everybody else does, and be a valuable and viable part of the anomalies community for a while to come. At least I hope he does.
I hope so too. Yeah, because he did shut down the Newswire part of his website too, which was a big part of the website, and one of the parts I really used a lot was the Newswire part. So.
I really enjoyed that.
It's a big loss to the online community for sure. The only other sort of newsy item that I wanted to talk about here for 2008, and one of them happened in June. One of them actually happened way back in the beginning of the year, and one of them happened within the last couple of days. And that's celebrity endorsements of UFOs. Robbie Williams back in March, and just the other day, Keanu Reeves, I think promoting the new Alien movie. I forget which one it is now.
Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yes, there you go. The Day the Earth Stood Still. I think he's in it and was doing some promotion and gave a glowing endorsement to UFOs. Is there anything to these? The Robbie Williams one sounds like it has a little more leg because he actually wants to get more involved in UFOs and stuff. But is there anything really to this? Because for a while I've sort of been calling for celebrity UFO endorsements, and the way that 9/11 sort of got a lot of endorsements in the last few years. The 9/11 conspiracy, obviously, not the actual attack. but I've been kind of calling for more celebrities to endorse UFOs, and then we had these two over the course of 2008. Is there anything to this, or is it more just Robbie Williams, kind of quirky guy, had an interest in UFOs, and Keanu Reeves probably just made some offhand remark during the press tour, and ufology jumped all over it? That's what I think the second story is. But what do you think of the whole Robbie Williams thing? Nick, you're English, so I figure you have some perspective on this.
Well, there's actually no doubt. I mean, Robbie Williams does have a genuine interest in the UFO subject. It's not the guy has had countless records in England. He's sort of like a megastar in Britain. Sold millions of records. He doesn't need to hype himself on the UFO subject. And he actually does have a genuine interest in the UFO subject. He travelled over to the Laughlin conference last year, or earlier this year, I should say. So in that respect, I think his interest, I'm 100% sure, is a genuine one. He's quite learned about the subject if you hear him talking about different aspects, and obviously wants to learn more. I think as far as the subject's concerned, if it brings a subject into the public domain via the media because they're talking about celebrities, in that respect, it's a good thing. I think, when you kind of go down the more sort of kooky aspects of certain celebrities, then it might have a detrimental effect. But I think, it just depends who the person is. I mean, there have been a lot of famous people throughout the years, celebrities, who have had a deep interest in UFOs. Jackie Gleason, who actually has a weird crashed UFO story attached to him. He was very big into UFOs, and so it's actually nothing new in that respect. To what extent it really helps the subject, I don't think it hinders the subject. I think it brings the subject to people's attention. I'm not sure it actually directly aids us in any way, but there's no reason why it should. I mean, just because somebody's famous, it doesn't mean that they're not allowed to have an interest in UFOs.
Yeah. For the record, my favorite UK celebrity is Jordan.
Yeah, I wonder why. He's got a couple of things going for him.
Absolutely, that's for sure. All right, now we've wrapped up 2008. We've closed the book on 2008, and folks can listen to this and then, re-listen in 10 years from now and get an idea of actually what was going on in ufology in the year 2008. A lot of different stories.
Well, scary stuff.
I know, it is scary. And I remember last year, Greg, we sort of touched on what's hot, what's not in esoterica as 2007 closed, and I'm trying to recollect here what we talked about and said cryptozoology was on the rise, ghost hunting, the bubble was about to burst, 9/11 seemed to be sort of going down. It seemed like this year the election really dominated a lot of people and took a lot of people away from the esoterica, I think, that normally would have been more involved. But as 2008 closes, I guess, in my opinion, it seems like UFOs still, I think they're still kind of on the rise a little bit, especially with UFO hunters. And despite some of these lousier stories of 2008, UFOs seem to have gained a foothold. I guess it's a testament to their staying power and how they sort of broke through in 2007 kind of like what Nick was saying at the very beginning of the show and what you were saying, that the UFOs were a fixture of news here in this year, but some of it kind of disappointing, but they established themselves as part of the talking points, I guess you could say, of what's esoteric in the mainstream media. Cryptozoology, I think, took kind of a hit here in 2008. Ghost hunting, we're still waiting for the bubble to burst, but I think it's starting to phase out. And 9/11, of course, still kind of going down the tubes. I don't see much change as we close 2008 for what's hot and what's not, but you guys obviously have your finger on the pulse of the online esoteric world. Do you see anything sort of emerging as 2009 picks up, for genres or trends or fields that are either going up or going down? And let's start with Greg.
Oh, okay. See, I was going to wait for Nick and then see if I could riff off that. I don't know. I tend to disagree with you about the ghost thing. Ghosts are perennially popular. Those shows will always be on. Yes, they go in waves. I still personally enjoy Monster Quest. I think that's a very good show.
Oh, Monster Quest, the best show on TV for esoteric.
Because they don't get all excited about stuff. They don't have that quick cutting. They don't have, extremely loud, dramatic music behind people while they're talking so you can hardly hear what they're saying. Maybe I'm just old. It's just, let's present the subject, in a way that is respectable to a larger amount of people and, maybe give somebody a little different perspective on these things, not just, crazy people out in the woods, faking Bigfoot. I mean, there's something to that. There might be something to China's Wild Man. There might be something to the Loch Ness Monster, all the hoaxes and things notwithstanding. So that I think that show is going strong, and just from my, personally looking at it, I think anybody is interested in that show. And as far as the UFO thing, yeah, I think it is still on the rise. I think it hasn't peaked yet. I think another show that kind of challenges what UFO Hunters does and takes it to another level may be the thing that tips the balance. I don't know if that's going to happen. If it does, I hope I'm involved with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the UFO thing, I think, is a little bit separate from the other parts of the paranormal because it kind of, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. It kind of tells people that in a very concrete way and in a very universal, in all senses of the word, way, that we probably don't know everything there is to know, and even the smartest people in the world that you always see on TV and are quoted on news shows and write the important books don't know everything there is to know. And then there's that little maverick in all of us that says, I know something that the smart person doesn't. There's more knowledge to be had, and that might be that there's aliens on other planets, or that there's other dimensions that we can, that somebody or something can move through and interact with us.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that the UFO thing is, the subject will always be popular. Like you said, depending on what's going on. 9/11 knocked out all aspects of the paranormal for quite a few years. Nobody cared about it because they were worried about whether they were going to die or not.
Yeah.
And the election, had the same effect in another way. It just kind of sucks all the energy out of everything else.
Yeah, and just to clarify,
and then during Democratic administrations, it seems that the media and producers and all that are more open to things that are weird and maybe even critical of the government, etc. That's been the trend for the last maybe 30 years.
Nice. Let's hope so. Let's hope so for us. But let me just clarify a couple things on my outlook here, because I did think of something else. But I do want to say, I don't think that the ghost bubble's burst yet, but I think the bubble's expanding to the point where it's going to burst soon, and I feel like an oversaturation point's beginning to be reached. That's kind of my outlook on ghosts.
I'd agree with that.
And for cryptozoology, I think it had a lot of momentum going for it as 2008 started, and I think it's now still trying to recover from the Bigfoot body bonanza hoax of midsummer. So I think it sort of took the wind out of the sails of cryptozoology that it had going into the beginning of 2008. And I'll make a off-kilter prediction here for a strange trend I think that is beginning to percolate, and that's anomalous discoveries of an archaeological.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you know what a great show is, and it's got that annoying music and all that, but it's Underground Worlds or Underground something. I can't remember. This guy just goes to places, underground cities and things, and walks through them and crawls through tunnels and sewers and everything. And I love that show.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've noticed a lot in the news in the last 2-3 months or so, a lot of oddball discoveries of an archaeological nature, and I feel like that's percolating into something here. Maybe we'll see more of in 2009 for people to.
I'll get down to Discovery Channel right now.
So what about you, Nick? You have your finger on the pulse of a whole bunch of different realms of esoterica. What do you think as far as closing out 2008? What's hot? What's not? And what do you see being some of the breakout genres or fields or stories in 2009?
Well, I think from what we've seen in 2008, I think it's going to be dependent upon how the media responds and promotes, some of the key events. It wouldn't have mattered if, the Georgia Bigfoot hoax had occurred or not. No one would have cared unless it had got picked up by the media big time.
Yeah.
So I think, a lot of it is dependent upon how much the interaction the media have with us and the people that investigate these things or they're making claims, etc. I think you're right actually on the ghost angle. I think when it comes to ghosts, there's only so much you can do in terms of listening to weird noises in a haunted house and with night scopes, etc. I would agree with Greg about Monster Quest. I enjoyed Monster Quest, not just I'm deeply involved in cryptozoology, but because I think cryptozoology is one of these subjects that more than any other actually lends itself very well to TV. Because, if you're talking about, say, Roswell, really all you can do, typical show, pans around the town of Roswell, films the outside of the museum, goes out as close as they can to the crash sites, etc., and does a few head and shoulders interviews because it's 60 years ago and there's nothing else to show. Whereas with cryptozoology, you can go to the Pacific Northwest forests or the Himalayas and, have footage of people trekking through the locations, searching for things that may still be there. And it's kind of like, genuine reality TV. So I think we're going to see more of a push with crypto because it's more immediate and we're actually looking for things that could still be there rather than analysing a 60-year-old case.
Yeah.
So I think crypto will keep its momentum. I think the UFO subject will probably pretty much rumble on as it's rumbled on for the last 60 years. We'll have people with different theories talking about different cases. We'll probably have 3 or 4 major cases throughout the year which will get occasional interest from the media, which will be talked about for quite a while by the UFO community. Several old dudes will die off. A few new people will come along. We'll be arguing about this or that.
Yeah.
A few new books will come out. More files, and this time next year, we won't have any more answers.
That's a fair assessment, and it's always impossible to predict the esoteric. Greg and I had no idea last year when we were talking that this year would have been so full of strange failures as far as stories go. And I was just thinking to myself, we could be sitting around here, the 3 of us talking next year, and we'll say, who could have guessed that 2009 would have been the year of the abduction? Do you know what I mean? And then it turns out there's...
You're quite right. Things could just smack us out of the blue in the face.
Yeah.
One thing I would
I hope so.
say, one thing I would just quickly say, I don't want to take any more away from Greg if he wants to chime in. One last quick thing would be that, as far as the whole UFO issue and the subject and the people in it are concerned, I certainly, joking aside, I don't look forward to the day, when I read on somebody's obituary in the UFO field.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think that, when people like yourself, Tim, when you're like 40 or whatever, I would like to think that by then, that the kind of the old guard kind of clenched stranglehold that it's either nuts and bolts or we don't want to know about it would be gone. And the community, in 2020 or whatever, would be looking at some really radical approaches to the subject that might actually get some answers, rather than just trying to prop up a 60-year-old theory that everything that's unexplained can be explained as nuts and bolts craft, when there could be more intriguing and interesting aspects to the subject that, the old guard haven't allowed through the door, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of those aspects, and Tim has those aspects on his show a lot. We had talked about them a lot. To some extent, there's a lot. Yeah, well, there are a lot of other people that are doing it. Reagan Lee's doing it, and
well, that's true. I mean, there are certain.
It's just not. It's not hasn't entered the consciousness. That's all.
Yeah, certain stalwarts at the conferences and certain magazines that want to just stay in the whole realm of like Kehoe era ufology.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't want to get away from that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, well, things will move away from that because things will change, and like I said, the stuff that we all discuss and we're interested in talk about have been around for anywhere from 5 to 20 to 30 to 40 years. It's just that not too many people pay attention to them because of the ETH stranglehold on the UFO community. And I think if some of these other aspects that are unpopular start getting looked at, studied, databases mined, different questions asked when you arrive somewhere, that might start to make a difference. Or, something else that we completely don't even know about yet. I said one time that in an interview somewhere, I said, I hope there at some point that in 20 years somebody comes up with an idea that pisses me off, or even sooner.
I actually hope that UFOs are time travelers.
Interesting.
That would be kind of cool.
You hope that what, Nick?
I hope that aliens are time travelers, really.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think that'd be kind of a cool theory, the idea that they're not really aliens at all, but they're, us from the future, something like that. But I don't know why, I'm kind of fascinated by the idea that maybe they're us, masquerading as aliens.
I like that idea too, and if Nick has that vote in, my hope is that they're discarnate intelligences that occasionally incarnate physically once in a while, so that we can see them and they can interact with us.
All right, then if I'll chime in, and then what was that case that APRO broke way back in the day about the abduction with the woman with the big breasts there?
You mean the V.S. Boas case in South America?
I'm hoping just for that.
You know what? I'll change my vote. That'll be my number one. What I just said will be my number 2 vote.
And then just to wrap it up, let's talk about the truly big story of 2008. That was me visiting Bishop in August, and then Nick coming out here to Boston to visit me. It was really
that's cool.
Just to sort of break the fourth wall. It was just great to meet you guys, and I have a lot of respect for you guys, and just to be sort of the guy wet behind his ears who's only been in this for like 5 years, to be able to hang out with you guys as a peer and a colleague was just awesome for me, and I appreciate just your kindness and everything. Both of you guys, and Greg taking me in, and Nick coming to stay with me, so it was awesome.
I had a cool time hanging out in your dungeon where you do all your radio interviews from or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Nick's the only one who's ever seen the Binnall of America studio, so.
Yeah.
Binnall of America dungeon.
That's right, yeah. And he also met my mom. We still...
Yeah, I did. I got to meet the Binnall family and drink some pumpkin beer and get to see a bit of Boston as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, you should have seen... Nick went to bed, and I rushed up to wake him up because the Red Sox had come back from a 7-run deficit in the playoffs. And I said, "You got to come down here and see this." I'm screaming my head off like a maniac.
He said, "Fuck off," and he went back to sleep.
Yeah.
It's basketball, it's not football.
That was
it's baseball, not football.
Oh, man. But, all right, I got about 10 minutes left on my recorder here, so I'll do the wrap-up part. And what's next for you guys? What's going on with the UFO Mystics? What's going on with Greg? And what's going on with Nick? I guess we'll start with Nick here. What's coming up down the pike for you in 2009 that people can look forward to?
Well, I've actually got several books coming out. I've been a bit of a book fiend on the writing front lately. Anomalous Books are doing a new book from me called Sci-Fi Secrets, which deals with the way in which there's been an overlap between the world of science fiction and conspiracies, like, for example, this whole story about Spielberg, possibly, or specifically, more importantly, maybe the Day the Earth Stood Still, the idea that, was there official interest in trying to promote the film. So it's like a cross between how sci-fi and the official world and conspiracy theories have crossed paths. So I have that book coming out. So 2 cryptozoology books coming out. And I'm working on a very weird and controversial book which deals with a think tank group that existed in the government in the 80s and the 90s, which concluded that UFOs had demonic origins.
Wow.
And I got hold of some files and done a lot of interviews on this particular subject, and hopefully that one will be out at some point in 2009. That's largely dependent upon getting more material, not so much writing it. It's just, it's just a hard story to follow, that's all.
Yeah, that sounds like a barn burner. I'm looking forward to hearing about that.
Very weird story.
And Greg, what about you? What do we have on tap from Greg Bishop in 2009?
Can I just quit right now? Every time Nick's got like 8 books coming out.
No, I was going to say that's no surprise when he said he had a bunch of books coming out.
Well, I'm in discussions with a agent right now for about 3 or 4 different books, some having to do with UFOs type subjects, some not. I've got one that I would like to do, but nobody seems to have any interest in, which will probably be a self-published or a print-on-demand. It has to do with the cattle mutilation phenomenon and the non-UFO aspects of it, which I found quite a bit of, while not denying that part of it, but looking into the parts of it that don't really have anything to do with aliens and UFOs and all that, which I guess is sure to piss off some people, but might scare the beef industry. I don't know.
Nice. So we got 2 books coming out, one from Nick and one from you, that are going to scare people. So that's
and UFO Mystic will keep going along. It's funny. I mean, Nick has noticed this too. I mean, I'll go through periods where I don't have anything to say and don't care about the subject at all, and then I'll go through a period of like 2 or 3 weeks where I can't shut up about it, and then I'll have a post every day.
Yeah.
Nick just seems to plod along and do what he needs to do, and if he can't find something, he'll link to something that's that people haven't really heard about and that could lead to something else, and that seems to be his part of the UFO Mystic when I get lazy. And then for a month I wasn't doing anything because I was working on the film with Paul Kimball, and I was just basically getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep every day, and I couldn't really think of anything to write. And Nick held down the fort then and did it very well. So I don't have any plans to leave town for long periods of time in 2009. So.
Nice. And I know that you, let's also plug here, a couple plugs that we want to get in. Nick, you are a contributor for Daily Grail's Dark Lore Volume 2. I'm good friends with Greg Taylor over there at Daily Grail, and I want to make sure we get a plug in for that. People should definitely pick up Dark Lore Volume 2. And, Greg, you just launched the Radio Mysterioso website. Is that RadioMysterioso.com?
Yes, it is. Oh, there was one other thing. Since you mentioned the Dark Lore, I just got an email from Greg Taylor today, and I have an article already written that I wrote a few years ago about alien writing researcher Mario Pazzaglini, and it's basically kind of a biography of him and all of his influences and things that he was doing that his colleagues, he was a clinical psychologist. A lot of people didn't know he was into the alien writing thing and esoterica and the occult, and, so that's a very interesting story. I think that may be going in Dark Lore 3. But the Radio Mysterioso site, I finally, after talking to Miles Lewis from Anomaly Radio, who's been basically, holding my hand for the last few years to get some of my stuff out on the net, he explained to me in specific terms, how to load up shows. So I've got interviews from all the way from over 10 years ago up to now that I've been digging through all my files and tapes and CDs and everything, and every few days or every week or so I'm going to put up a new show. I just put up one with Pamela Stonebrook, who was the reptilian sex woman for a while.
Nice. Yeah, so definitely people should check that out, because it sounds like there's going to be a lot of cool hidden gems that are going to be coming down the pike at RadioMysterioso.com.
And a bunch more from Bill Moore, things that I've never posted before that have never been rebroadcast, and people seem to really like those.
Nice, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing those things. What can I say here? 3 hours plus talking about the year 2008. I can't thank you guys enough for taking part in this historic dual guest broadcast. Hopefully I held up my end of the bargain, did a pretty good job moderating. I did the best I could on having never done this thing before, but I had a great time talking to you guys, and it worked out perfectly, exactly the way I wanted it to. Devolved into a conversation instead of just a timeline of talking points, and we still did all the big events, but we also discussed them and sort of shared ideas and shared perspectives. So I can't thank you enough. As I pointed out, I had a chance to spend some great quality FaceTime with both of you guys this year, and it was really a thrill for me. And I can't thank you enough for coming back on BOA Audio, and hopefully this is the beginning of a new tradition on the program where we dissect the previous year. And I really would like to probably have you guys both back on again sometime in the future just to do a straight-up ufology episode where we're not, encumbered by just talking about one particular year's events. But I just want to thank you guys again for coming on the show. Nick, thank you very much.
All right, well, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. I had a good time.
And Greg, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. You always do a great job, and I'll come on and talk about anything, anytime.
Wow, all right. That does it for the 2008 Year in Ufology double guest, double episode, all-in-one week extravaganza. It really wasn't that painful, surprisingly, and I'm stunned that we managed to get the episodes out right on the schedule we had planned, especially considering our erstwhile style of posting shows. I'm stunned, really, that this is going to be in people's hands on January 2nd. Of course, huge thanks to the UFO Mystics, Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop. They are amazing, good friends of mine, and, as I said, highly decorated esoteric researchers. They are tops in this field, folks. Hopefully, if you didn't know much about Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop, you do now after this marathon conversation, and you want to find out more about them. So here's how you do it. You go to nickredfern.com. That's sort of a hub. It'll take you to all the great Nick Redfern penned blogs. And or you want to find out about Greg Bishop, you check out excludedmiddle.com or Radio Mysterioso, RadioMysterioso.com. Radio Mysterioso, if you're not listening to that, you're missing out. Check it out, add it to your esoteric audio playlist. You might want to start listening to it while we're on hiatus here in January. It might be a good fill-in for BOA Audio while I'm cultivating new shows. So check out Radio Mysterioso, awesome program. And hopefully by now you know that you can find great stuff from Nick and Greg daily at UFOmystic.com, UFOmystic.com. Check that out. Outstanding website. Should be a daily stopping point for anyone looking for cool UFO news. Up next, I'm going to disappoint you a little bit, and I apologize in advance. I know I promised the anti-Gian Cassar email here for BOA Audio listener feedback, but I had a little change of heart. I don't want to close out the year on a negative note. So we're going to go with the old standby, a little feedback from me to you. I've already gushed about how great this audience is several times already this season, but I'm going to do it once more. Thank you for a great year here at BOA. You keep downloading those shows, you keep sending those emails, you keep looking out for this program like you always do. And I'm going to keep doing what I do, and hopefully 2009 is going to be awesome. I look back on 2008, and I'm amazed by some of the names and some of the people we talked to. Jacques Vallée, Linda Moulton Howe, Bill Burns, South African UFOs, French UFOs, the 100th episode with George Knapp, and then really to round out 2008, just 3 back-to-back home run episodes with the incomparable Stan Friedman, of course, in the Christmas special, and then this double episode, double guest, all-in-one week extravaganza that was the 2008 Year in Ufology. What a year! I'm blown away. I'm almost breathless here, running down some of the crazy stuff that went on this program in 2008. So, just thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. I hope you had a great New Year's celebration, and come on back in about 4 weeks for a whole new slew of BOA Audio episodes. I suppose we can just reveal one of the names now, since I've teased it at the beginning of the program, and there really is no next week preview, so sometime coming up when we return to the airwaves, probably not the first week back, but I'd say maybe the second or third, depending on who we return with as a guest. I can tell you that we'll be having Betty Mailer on. She is the head of the UFO Society of Ireland. We're going to be calling all the way over to Ireland to talk Irish UFOs, Irish esoterica with Betty Mailer. Very captivating and charismatic woman, a very fascinating and enlightening episode. You're really going to dig it, I think. More international UFO interviews coming up in 2009. Stay tuned to BOA, as always, for more information. I guess we'll wrap up the BOA audio listener feedback portion of the show here, even though we've kind of gone off the beaten path into a whole different tangent. I promise we'll have the anti-Gian Cassar, anti-Bermuda Triangle email on the very first episode we come back. I just didn't want to close out what's been a great ongoing vibe the last few weeks with what I thought was a little bit of a negative point of view on what's been going on here on the show. But hey, it's always good to have a little teaser, I guess, for people to come back after the break. You're going to want to just come back for that. I hope not, but maybe some folks will. So come on back for that, and if you want to be a part of BOA Audio listener feedback, there's 3 ways to do it. Either write to boaaudio@hotmail.com or simply go to binnallofamerica.com and click the contact button. That's pretty much the easiest way. And the third way is the most interactive. It is joining up at the official Binnall of America forum, theusofE.com, THEUSOFE.com. Quite a little community that I love being a part of, and I hope you join up and join in on some of our fun times and hijinks. So send me your emails, send me your stuff. I'll put it in the mailbag, and chances are I'll get back to you right away because I'll be on break here. And hopefully you'll be featured in a future edition of BOA Audio Listener Feedback. I'm going to try and make it a little more regular feature when we come back from break so we can get more emails read. But we like to tinker, as you know, here with the format at the end. Let's roll through the list here of the infamous and esteemed BOA staff. Big thanks to them, of course, not just for helping out with this episode, but also with helping out at Binnall of America for all of 2008. Great group of folks. If the BOA readers and listeners are the fuel that drives the machine, then the BOA staff is the oil that keeps the whole operation running smoothly. Leslie, Chiron, Arlie, Jovi, Tina Senna, Rochelle Hawks, and Richard Thomas from Wales. They are my esoteric warriors, and I would not want to go into battle without them by my side. They're the best. The BOA staff, thank you so much for all your contributions in 2008, and I look forward to working with all of you in 2009. Binnallofamerica.com, BINNALL of America.com. If you haven't visited the website yet, if you haven't read the columns, you got to break on through to the other side. BOA, make it a part of your everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. I'm going to pull a shocker here, my friends, and not ask for any donations. I just wouldn't feel right asking for donations if we're not going to be doing episodes for the month of January. This isn't like the season finale when we try to clear the books and get things ready for the following season. This is just a little mini break, and like I said, I wouldn't feel right asking for donations from folks, especially in this tight financial times and when we're not going to be putting out episodes for a month. But I'll be back to asking you for money as soon as I come back on the air. I'll be asking you for money. Don't you worry about that. But until then, put your wallet back in your pocket and enjoy the month of January. And big thanks again to everybody who was part of the Secret Santa campaign at BOA and made donations. You know who you are. You are my Secret Santas, and I humbly thank you and appreciate your donation over the holiday season. Next week on the program, there is no next week. Haven't you been paying attention? We'll be back at the end of January. Betty Mailer is one of the guests. I already told you that. I have a ton of other guests lined up that I'm going to be interviewing over the next few weeks. It feels weird saying goodbye, but I'll be back at the end of January, I promise. Thank you for all your support throughout 2008. Have a great first month of 2009. You'll be hearing from me again at the end of January. Until then, this is Tim Binnall, signing off.